For wrestling diehards only, this is the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in. It is another edition, our second trip here on the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. Again, we do this live every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Time, breaking down the great sport of wrestling week in, week out here in the gem state of Idaho. A couple of ways you can watch this live: IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, as well as our Twitter account. You can also go back the next day. If you can't be here live with us, you can download this podcast wherever you download your podcasts at. So a lot of different ways to get this content in. My name is Brandon Baney. Our panel is Al Fontes, the gentleman that's on the right side of your screen, Bryan Zollinger down below, and Jacob Eck is here as well. So thanks for being here, and thanks to everybody that's tuning in live. Again, you can throw up questions, comments, shout outs. We'll throw them on the air live. We had, look at this. Brian Skellinger came on early tonight, about a half an hour ago, wishing everybody a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And so, yes, as you're watching this tonight and you've got questions, comments, you want us to talk about certain things, throw a question out there and we'll answer it. And go ahead and hit that like button while you're sitting here watching it as well. That helps out down the line with social media algorithms and all that great stuff. So, all right, we'll start with a little around the horn discussion. I kind of like starting the show this way by asking, what was the best thing that you saw last week? Well, we'll start with Jacob. Jacob, what was the best thing that you saw in the sport of wrestling this past week?
I spent Friday in Marsh Valley. There's a lot of good stuff all weekend. But so Marsh Valley, a lot of 3A actual top ring matchups happened, and then I got to watch Brunson versus Tucker Bowen. That was a good one. Brunson just does what he keeps doing and winning. And then Nampa in Oregon, that tournament was crazy. I finally got to look at it and loved it. Loved every second of it. So.
Yeah, some tough out-of-state competition for Nampa over there in Oregon. The big story, of course, with them was Diedrich Navarro officially committed to Northwestern. Guys, I'm wearing my UCLA shirt tonight. I'm a big UCLA fan in pretty much every sport. UCLA better get on the ball here. They're missing out on all these great Idaho wrestlers. They're all going to the Big Ten, it seems like.
Yeah. So, now that UCLA is changing conference, they need to add wrestling. So they're, everyone else in the conference has it. So let's go California, right?
Yes.
What they don't know about UCLA, back in the 70s and early 80s, they had the Schultz brothers, the Kistler brothers. They had a team that had numerous NCAA All-Americans that they had to disband when they dropped the program. It's devastating. So, yes, they should bring it back.
Yeah, got to pick that up now that they're moving to the Big Ten, like Brian said. So, Brian, what was the best thing that you saw this past week?
I was at a middle school conference finals, and that was fun to watch. We've got a lot of youth coming up, 7th and 8th graders that were just amazing. So that was fun. I'd say on the high school level, though, because I was at the junior high, I didn't see anything live over the weekend. I saw some duels, but that tournament in Marsh Valley, those matchups, one that Jacob I know very well watched for sure was Coulter Burton's match with Coy Orr. I mean, you've got two of the best in the state there, and that, I didn't see it live, but it looks like a battle. You had Austin Machin, Grayson Williams, a couple of state championships in that matchup. And then the Calhoun tournament, it was fun to see in Oregon, to see Fruitland win that, Middleton second. So it was good to see those Idaho schools go to Oregon and really, the top 5-6 schools were Idaho schools. Probably top 10 were Idaho schools. I mean, they really cleaned house. Middleton had some champions and Fruitland won that. And so it's nice to see kind of where those schools were at.
Yeah. And Al, what was the best thing that you saw this past week?
Well, I was on travel this weekend, but I monitored a lot of tournaments. And I just want to say a shout out to Mac Mauger of Blackfoot. He went to the Walsh Ironman in Ohio, which is by far the toughest high school tournament in the country. It's a showcase invitational. It's like the who's who in prep wrestling. Kids that have come out of this tournament have been NCAA world champions, Olympic medalists, etc. He took 6, but in his weight, the top 8 were all ranked in the country. Meridian was there. Mara, Hudson Rogers, and Gooley both were within a match, I believe, of place in, and then Matthew Martino as well. It's a tough tournament. It's a tournament where state champions basically go to lose. But I commend them all for putting it on the line at that tournament. And but also want to talk a little bit about the Tim Matthews tournament in Jerome. Fairly tough tournament for the preseason. From what I was able to see, Minico is one of the best teams there. Of the placers in the top 6 in the 15 weight groups, 44% of them were ranked in the top 6 in their state. So pretty good, tough tournament.
Yeah, Al, you said that line a couple of times before we hopped on the air tonight, where state champions go to lose, because it is the cream of the crop. I think that's probably going to be the episode of the title of the episode, where state champs go to lose.
Yes.
For those that maybe aren't aware of the scope of this is one of the premier competitions, not just in regionally, but nationally, right, Al?
It is the number 1 high school tournament in season in the country. The competition, you have the Pennsylvania, New Jersey's, the Blair Academies, the Wyoming Seminary Prep. Idaho doesn't have a long history, but from my associates that run the tournament, people I know I've been working with for many years, they're really happy about the Idaho kids coming. They see what we have. And they're hoping to see more, and we're hoping to see more get invited in the future. But it is the showcase. I wouldn't doubt there's over 100 college coaches there watching.
Yeah, the best of the best all converge for one weekend of competition for sure. The best thing that I saw this weekend was actually something that's coming up. It's not a thing that's happened yet, but this Saturday, the 17th, Grangeville High School is going to be hosting the first Beck Memorial Tournament. We talked about this last week, right? Andrew Beck, a pioneer and icon in the sport of wrestling in the state of Idaho, and tragically passed away earlier this year. And I think what a great opportunity to honor his legacy, continue that tradition. You know, we'll see a couple of Becks there wrestling and competing. And so that's what stood out to me, is I was looking ahead and saw that Grangeville is going to be hosting that this weekend. So I think that's going to be a pretty cool deal. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Definitely. All right. Well, I see more and more people joining. We had a little hiccup with Facebook as we got started tonight, but it's rocking and rolling now. So friendly reminder, this is the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast, where we talk about the great sport of wrestling week in, week out. We're here live every week on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. A lot of ways to consume this content. Go ahead and hit that like button while you're sitting there watching this tonight. That will help everybody that can't be here tonight, find it tomorrow or even Thursday down the line. So hit that like button. That helps out a ton with the algorithms. And then as we're talking tonight, you got a question you want to ask the panel, you got an athlete or a team you want to give a shout out to, somebody you want us to discuss, throw it up and throw it in the comments, and we'll throw it up on the screen and talk about it. So yeah, it's going to be really exciting. So the big news was Navarro signing with Northwestern. That's now, what did we decide? Was it the 8th or 9th Division I wrestler that signed this past year?
I think it's number 7, right?
7.
That's
Seven.
yeah.
See, this is why I'm not
class of 23, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, because even you got Mara is a junior, Mager's a junior, and who else is a junior that already signed this year?
Coulter
one more.
Burton.
Coulter Burton, yes. So they're definitely looking this way. And those are the kids that are spending time in the offseason, going to Fargo, going to Super 32. They're putting it on the line. So they're getting recognized for their hard work.
For sure. So yeah, take us through the typical recruiting calendar, Al, because I'm going to lean on you because you've seen wrestling all over the Western United States. Where are we at in the recruiting process? If there is a kid or an athlete out there that hasn't gotten that bite yet, what's the calendar look like in terms of exposure and maybe getting on with a college?
Well, I mean, if they're a junior, there's no panic. Usually the ones that get recruited now, they're getting them early, but these guys have resumes. They placed at Fargo, Super 32, multiple state tournaments. They try to get them a little early. But most, I mean, Brian and Jacob, just usually it's right after the kid's senior year normally where most kids get recognized right after the state tournament. I would say a majority. But the blue chipper level kids, the ones placing at Walsh Ironman and placing at the Reno TOC and those type of tournaments, or Fargo, usually they have good resumes, usually getting picked up early now. Usually this tournament. I don't think there'll be another recruiting until after the end of the season, I believe.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sounds right.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So Brian, we see a lot of times in other sports, football, basketball, a kid will graduate early to go to college early to start their career. Do we see that in wrestling as much, or is that more for other sports?
Not really. In wrestling, usually people finish out their senior season. You have some of the kids that take the Olympic path, kind of like Skellinger was on, where they're looking towards that. But even Skellinger and Atau came back to do high school. So you usually see kids finish out high school unless they're on that Olympic track, and that's pretty rare you see. I think Aaron Pico was maybe the last kid I saw really focus on that Olympic track. But
yeah, I remember Pico. He was a freshman in high school, went undefeated, won the Walsh Ironman, won the Junior Nationals, and was already beaten senior level wrestlers in Europe. I wish he would have stuck around longer, but yeah, he was 1 in a million type kids.
Yeah, that's quite a resume. And there's certain boxes you can start checking off, like you said, the blue chipper prospects, and we've seen that in the state of Idaho. Jacob, you talked about Nampa went over to Oregon this past week, and they did well in the team competition, but for some of the individuals that we're used to seeing, finish at the top of the podium, they got knocked back a little bit. How strong will this make Nampa, the fact that they went over and took on some really good out-of-state competition?
Well, I mean, if you just take Diedrich, his losses in Idaho are Mac, and I mean, that's probably it for the most part. So he goes over, wrestles some California kids, guys that are ranked in the country, or I mean, Super 32 placers, actually wrestles super hard in December. I mean, come February, he's even going to be a little bit more hungry, because now it just kind of showed him probably has some holes, just like Exford. I mean, Exford goes over and wrestles tough against Fargo champ Mitchell Niner, but then, he found, okay, I got a few things I got to tweak, and there are people that are right there, and it's good to wrestle that in December, because February, Coach Navarro and the Nampa staff, they're pretty good at, locking things up. So come February, it's going to be tough for them to be beat, especially at least that way.
Yeah. So early on, we have teams that do duels, teams that go out of state for competition. And we kind of touched on it at the very beginning, but to me, always one of the signature wrestling events that really starts it off is the Matthews invite in Jerome. Brian, for those that may not know, the Matthews name in the Magic Valley is synonymous with wrestling. I mean, I think of Derek Matthews, who just came through Declo recently, but that is a long-standing wrestling name in the Magic Valley.
Absolutely. Grandfather, obviously, Tim, and then son, and now Derek. I mean, you got 3 generations of college wrestlers there. And so, well-deserved. It's a tough tournament. Like Al was talking, there were some great finals matchups there that, cross divisions, some 3A against 4A schools. And so matches that we're not going to get at the state tournament. So these tournaments earlier in the year, the Marsh Valley tournament, you saw some 3A, 2A, these cross matches, I think early in the season are fun. And, it helps with the overall state rankings and kind of see where they're at. And there's some big ones coming up this weekend that we're going to see a lot of cross divisional matches and duels, the high country duels at Bonneville High School this week. You got obviously Reno, so a lot of the good teams are heading down to the Reno Tournament of Champions this week, but that's kind of what I'm looking forward to this week are these cross-divisional matchups between the different divisions of schools that we're not going to see at the state tournament. So we see them now, and we're not left to guess who's the best.
Yeah, we do get into these silos sometimes of 5A, 4A, 3A, especially with the rankings, which, by the way, we've brought in those back this year. on IdahoSports.com, the entire wrestling staff. We compile the team rankings, of course, the top 5 for each classification, but then we're ranking the individuals by weight class again as well. So that is such a fun feature. We dropped those last night around midnight, I think is when we finally got them up, but they've been up on the site all day today. They're right there on the homepage. You should definitely go check those out. We're doing that every single week. And so, yes, Brian, I'm excited too to see some of this cross-divisional matchup stuff, because you do get those matchups you wouldn't see otherwise, for sure. So we're getting some comments rolling in here. Lucinda wanted to talk about, we talked about the Iron Man a little bit. 7 guys went there last week. Mac Mauger took 6th. She said he lost 2 in the Bloods and then 2 in the round before the Bloods, which, I mean, it's still a pretty good, I mean, this is the elite talent. And so, yeah, to have a couple of L's like that could be disappointing, but I think that still is a phenomenal showcase there. So,
I mean, he had world placers in his weight. He had national champions amongst himself. I mean, his place in 6th there is an honor, because he could have easily not placed, or he could have easily placed 3rd. That's how tight these matches are. They're down to wire matches from round 1.
Yeah, that it's razor thin, right, Brian? When you go there, it's, I mean, like Al said, you could finish 3rd, you could not place.
Yeah. There's no weak kids there. I mean, like Al said earlier, it's where state champions go to die. And really proud of those 7 Idaho kids. I mean, Rogers, Gooley, Twait, Mauger, Martino. I mean, they, a lot of the kids won 4 matches. And we're, like she said, in the blood rounds and 1 out. I mean, that's an impressive showing for such as we talked about before, such a small state. To have that kind of turnout was really impressive.
For sure. Let's bring on Ryan Skaggs. He's one of our broadcasters up in North Idaho. He's a former wrestling coach, helped out at Lakeland for a couple of years. Inland Empire meet was in Spokane last week. And then, the Tri-State. We talked about this last week, Jacob, up in Coeur d'Alene this weekend. Ryan says he's going to be there with updates on Saturday on the IdahoSports.com Instagram. So, we're going to send Ryan Skaggs there. He's going to get some good footage for us. The Tri-State, though, this is Washington, Idaho, and Montana. Jacob, what kind of competition can our North Idaho wrestlers expect up there?
Oh, Washington brings, I mean, they wrestle all year round, do well at Fargo. So they're going to bring a lot of guys that wrestle, competitively for 11 months out of the year. So it's going to be, outside of Raleigh, this is probably the toughest tournament that comes. And then Montana might be few, but, some of those kids are very talented. And, I mean, there's been a lot of D1 guys coming out of Montana, and that's kind of what they're looking at too. So I think every year there's something crazy that happens at Tri-State. So I'm excited for that.
Yep, for sure. Ryan says Meade from Spokane is tough. There's some legit Washington. So I guess growing up in the Northwest, to me, Washington was always kind of the gold standard in wrestling. But Al, as we've talked about, I think Idaho has caught Washington and maybe is starting to eclipse Washington a little bit. What's your assessment?
If you look at the popular per capita, we're right up there. The depth starting to get deeper in some of the weights. We're catching up. But like Tri-State, I mean, guys, correct me. Years ago, I used to rank the top tournaments in the country for Wrestling USA. And I remember Tri-State was one of the top in the region there. It was the Washington, the Idaho. It's a very competitive tournament. But I think we're catching up. The culture is getting stronger here in the last several years. You're just seeing more kids go to Fargo, more kids placing at these higher level tournaments. Yes.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say that tournament's going to be fun. We don't have a lot of Idaho schools going this year, 3 or 4, Kellogg, Bonners Ferry, but someone we will see at Raleigh Lane is the Flathead, Montana school. They have some absolute hammers that traveled all summer to Fargo and to the team duels. And so, it's going to be fun to see them at Tri-State this week and see how a Montana school does up there compared to Coeur d'Alene and our schools. So there's some good matches.
We saw Flathead at the Raleigh Lane last year, and their kids are quiet. They just wrestle hard. They're not really flashy. And before you know it, they got the team lead. And you're like, whoa, where do these kids come from? They're just solid wrestlers. And I believe their coach was a Minnesota wrestler. So they got some pretty good training there at their school. I was impressed.
Yeah, the pride of Kalispell, Montana, Flathead High. They've long been the dominant program in western Montana, and then in the east, there's Sydney High School, which is all the way over by North Dakota, over on the ugly part of the state. I can say that because I'm from Montana. Brian, we talk about the teams up north, and in every sport, and in wrestling, it's no exception. It's always hard to gauge the teams up north because they're kind of doing their own thing. They're in, they used to be in the GSL, the Greater Spokane League. They still, face a lot of that Spokane competition, and it's tough for the rest of the state sometimes to get a gauge on what's going on up north, right?
It is. I mean, really, a lot of the time, the only times the schools in the east see them are Raleigh Lane. Usually, once in a while, there's an exception to that. Bucks Bags, occasionally you get some. Post Falls will come down to that. So it's really tough to gauge, especially with some of the smaller schools up there. I mean, and when it comes to seating at state, that's always been kind of an issue. Is there's not a lot of head-to-heads with some of the kids up north and some of the kids in East Idaho. So, it's fun to see these tournaments, and all we can do is follow the brackets and, see how they're doing at these out-of-state tournaments or the tournaments up there. But again, that's what makes Raleigh Lane great too, is you do get a handful, Lewiston, Post Falls, Bonners Ferry, you get a lot of Sandpoint, Moscow. I mean, you get a lot of these schools coming down, which makes Raleigh Lane even more fascinating. And you just hope for those matchups that we don't normally get to see because of the geographical challenges of Idaho.
Right. And I know Lewiston was supposed to come down to the Treasure Valley for their season opener and had to cancel that because the roads were so bad that they were, so they pivoted and had to go somewhere else. And so, it's like, dang, it would have been nice to see them in action. Travis Henderson says Flathead. We were talking about Flathead from Montana. They're going to be at Tri-State. They beat South Fremont this weekend at a tournament in Butte. Oh, Butte, Montana. What a great place. Great duel. It's and for South Fremont, so Kalispell Flathead would be like a 5A school here in Idaho. So for South Fremont, a 3A Jacob to go toe to toe with basically a 5A school, pretty impressive.
No, it's good. Still speaking of that, I can't wait for Meridian South Fremont. Looking way ahead, but it's coming. The other thing I was hoping for when we got to the cross classification was, when's a state dual tournament coming? Even if it was top 2 each division, let them wrestle, something like that. Maybe one day.
Yeah, that'd be a great idea.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Brian? Like a little tournament of champions or something where we.
Yeah, I would love a state dual tournament. Somebody should throw it together. Like we've always tried to get it, a super state tournament too. You take the top 4 placers in each division at the end of the season, but we tried for years and years to get something like that going, and it's just so hard. It's a long season, and you finish that, and it's tough to keep them together. But I'd love to see a state dual tournament because that can change rankings. We might have one team ranked one way or another, but there could be a better dual team, and you just never know how one team might have more depth that shows up at a tournament. One team might be better at duels. So, it's almost a different sport or a different tournament for sure. So I'd love to see that. And IHSA needs to get on that.
So you bring up a good point. You look at Bishop Kelly. Are they, they'd be tough to beat in a dual meet tournament with who they have now.
Yep.
Compared to a state where it's numbers game. So yeah, I think it's great. Back when I was in California, they started a dual meet state, and it was great. A lot of camaraderie, a lot of kids that may not be able to go to state or place a state were part of a state championship dual team, which is huge for kids. So, no, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, no doubt. Good. Amy's on board with it as well. Amy Stratford Skellinger. Yes, please. Yeah. I want to hear from the fans that are watching tonight. How many of you would be on board for that? I mean, I think that's a fantastic idea. Now, logistically, there's some things we got to work out, like Al said, long season and all that good stuff. But I like that. We could have a little think tank here. But as you're sitting here, like Amy did, join the conversation. We'll throw your comment up on the screen. We'll throw your if you want to ask us a question, you want us to talk about a certain team, a certain athlete. That's what we're here for. We're here to talk to you, the wrestling community. And while you're sitting here checking out the video as well, please hit that like button. It takes 2 seconds, and it's going to help everybody that isn't here live tonight be able to catch the replay of this tomorrow or Thursday or even Friday. Ryan Skaggs says he's in for. I think it's a great idea. And here's Troy. Heck yes, yeah. I think we're onto something here. We could maybe sign a little petition and send it in. What do you guys think? Yeah, I don't know. We might not get any traction here. With at the state level, Christy says we are in. Where's everybody at? Christy, where are you from? I want to know where everybody's watching from tonight as well. Daniel says could always shorten the season by 2 weeks, then add in super state as well as dual state. What do you think about that idea, Jacob?
I mean, I think most of the time everybody's whole goal is to just get to the state tournament kind of thing. So it'd almost have to be before. Maybe you could use dual state as some sort of qualifier for some of your guys for the state tournament, the individual state tournament or something. Kind of reward it before. Like Brian said, it's so hard. It's so long to wrestle, till the last weekend of February. Nobody wants to wrestle longer. And if you shorten it, goals change, and just kind of, it would take some work, and some people way smarter than I am.
yeah, that's something for somebody higher up the food chain for sure. So we're getting shout outs in here. Renee watching from Cuna tonight. Troy's in South Fremont. Christie's in South Fremont. Riker Simmons, 132-pound stud for the Cougars. Matthew's here tonight from New Plymouth. Boy, the Grims, what a juggernaut they've been the last couple of years. And then Lisa Wood is here from Middleton as well. Ryan says we could host it up north. Yeah, as the token North Idaho guy, right? Yeah, not enough stuff is ever up north for sure. So Rachel is here from Moscow tonight. Of course, the Zimmerman girls have been doing fantastic for Moscow. We've got Amy here from Soda Springs. How about this? Michelle and Dan Fabi from Kuski. How about a little love for Clearwater Valley? They're very unheralded at that 2A, 1A level. They compete very well for being one of the smaller schools in the classification. Brian, how hard is it for those 1A schools to have to go up and compete against 2A schools that are filling out maybe an entire lineup?
Yeah, I mean, just because the numbers, it makes it difficult, but we see, over in East Idaho, we see teams like, Ryrie, the 2A school, go up against the 5A teams in Idaho Falls and just absolutely demolish them. So, it really depends on the program, because some of these 1A, 2A team schools, New Plymouth, could compete with most of the 4A, 5A. We have on Idaho Sports, you have those mixed school rankings with Meridian, South Post, Nampa, Minico in the top 5 there. But, Ryrie, New Plymouth, they could compete. They're right there outside of that. So while it's tough because of the number game, you also see in these small towns like Ryrie, they get the numbers out. I mean, they've got little kids clubs with 70 kids showing up, preparing for high school. So it's tough, but a lot of these coaches in those smaller towns just do an amazing jobs of getting everyone out. And we used to laugh, just the farm boy tough attitude. And there's some truth to it, because they'll fill out a lineup and they're coming to brawl.
Yeah, no doubt.
Brian, you point an important thing. I mean, the thing about being good in wrestling, whether the numbers, a lot of numbers, it's not what you do in season, it's what you do off season. So the teams with the best teams, high school, usually have a club program, kids program. They're getting kids to Fargo. They're going to camps. It's a full-time 365 days a year process. So it's a lot of work. So
a lot of dedication from the athlete, from the coach, but also the parents. I know we have a lot of parents that are watching tonight. And thank you for what you do and what you allow your children to go do and compete. And it's phenomenal. It does. It takes a village, right, Jacob? It takes the community, coaches, parents, everybody.
That's for sure.
And that's what makes it great. You travel around during the summers and stuff, and it's a big family. I mean, we see the same people year round at these tournaments and become great friends, and you're cheering for, a lot of times you're cheering for your state rival at these national tournaments. And so it's fun to see the kids that might be their worst enemy in the state tournament, but at Fargo, they're best friends cheering for each other to pull through. And it makes, it's just great. It's a great sport. And I've always said it's a large extended family.
Yeah, it's a big family, right? And sometimes family members fight with each other, but at the end of the day, I like my family a whole lot better than yours. And that's how it is when we go to these national tournaments for sure. Yeah. All right. Let's preview real quick what's coming up this week. We talked about Tri-State a little bit. We talked about the first Beck Memorial Tournament taking place in Grangeville. And everybody that's watching, where are you going to be at this weekend? What are you going to be watching? I know there's a couple of different competitions going on Al, what stands out to you on the schedule coming up this week?
Our team, Rocky Mountain's going to be going to the Reno Tournament Champions. I believe Bora's going to be there. Eagle, Meridian, Nampa, Ridgeview will also be there too. And then for the girls, Columbia will be there with some of the better wrestlers in the state for girls. Gooding and in the Eagles girls team will be there. So my focus is on that tournament.
And what are some of the other, do you know what other states will be? Obviously Nevada, but
California, Nevada, Utah, Oregon. I'm not sure if a Washington team's going to be there. Sometimes they have Montana teams there. Greater Western United States, basically.
Yeah, going to be some good competition. Christy, with South Fremont, they're going to be at the High Country Conference Duels in Bonneville. So that'll be a good time as well. Brian, what can we expect at the HCC Duels in Bonneville?
That's where I'm going to be, and that's going to be a great tournament. It always is. That's your dual format tournament where you get to see a lot of those interdivisional matchups. I mean, Caldwell, Idaho Falls, Madison, Mountain Home, Rigby, Ryrie, Shelley. So you got Ryrie going up against a lot of the 5A schools. This is the opportunity to see how they hang. South Fremont going to be there. Great. They're Teton. Some 5As, Thunder Ridge, Skyline, and Idaho Falls, the 4A teams there. So you've got really just a good mix from 2A to 5A, and so that's what that makes it a lot of fun. There's usually about 20 to 25 teams, and they've got 2 gyms. And they used to have a girls tournament, but it's also exciting this weekend. Ryrie is hosting the first ever, I'm trying to think what they're calling it, the first Ryrie Rumble girls tournament. And so most of the girls from these teams that are coming to the High Country Conference Duels will be at the Ryrie tournament, which is just down the road a few miles. And so you got 2 really fun tournaments in East Idaho this week. And on top of that, the Wiley Dobbs Invitational happening in Twin Falls. I mean, that's everybody who's not in Nevada or the High Country or Tri-Stool, that's where they're at. That's kind of the Treasure Valley tournament this weekend. And I mean, there's a whole list. I don't know what they've got, but they've got to have, that's probably where Minico, Buell, more interdivisional matchups you get to see there. See how Buell competes with Minico, the top 3 and 2A schools or 3A and 4A schools going head to head. So that one's a lot of fun. So too much to watch this weekend for sure.
Yeah, what a problem to have for sure. Yeah, shout out to Matt Harris, the athletic director at Ryrie, really stepping up his game. You mentioned hosting the Ryrie Rumble girls wrestling tournament. They hosted a girls basketball tournament as well, just a couple weeks ago. So to host 2 events like that in one sports season, pretty awesome stuff happening there at Ryrie. Renee from CUNA says Cavemen are going to be at Wiley Dobbs, so you can put CUNA down on that list as well. HA says we'll be watching Tri-State, but our hearts will be with the Beck family. Certainly, yes. We talked about the first Beck Memorial Tournament taking place in Grangeville on Saturday. Jacob, what is there something we didn't hit on yet that you're excited to see how it goes this weekend?
No, I'm gonna be in Reno for the college tournament on Sunday. So I got some former club guys wrestling on Sunday, and got a few red shirts that need me to get out of the stands for a minute. So, I'm gonna I'll catch the Saturday portion of Reno, TOC, and then I'll do the college tournament. But I'll be watching. Bonneville Duels is probably, at least for East Idaho, that's the biggest thing. Tri-State up north, Bonneville Duels. There could be some good stuff. Brian, do you know if they're gonna do just the rotation, or are they going to do like 2 years ago when they put little championship pod?
Yeah, I've heard that it's and if you look on the website now, it's showing that it's going to be pods. So more like the Donnelly duels, stuff like that. They're going to have pods, and so they'll rather than just say what teams are undefeated at the end of it, you may have a true champion this year. So that's what I'm anticipating. That's what it looks like, and that's what I've heard. So
awesome.
Yeah. It's going to be a great time for sure. A great weekend of competition. Friendly reminder, Ryan Skaggs is going to be our Tri-State correspondent. He'll be at the Tri-State up in Coeur d'Alene, and he will have updates Saturday on the IdahoSports.com Instagram account. So make sure you go give that a follow so you can see what's going on up north and see some of those teams competing up there. Thanks to everybody for tuning in to another edition of the Matt Chat Prepcast here on IdahoSports.com. one last time I'm going to ask before we duck out. Okay, Alfonso says he's going to be watching from Idaho Falls and supporting Thunder Ridge. Okay, yeah, it's going to be East Idaho. It's going to be fun to see all these teams duking it out up there in District 6.
Yeah, Alfonso might have some kids. I don't know, Jacob, do we have any Ramoses down at Tournament of Champions this week? I know he's got 2 in college going now, but I'm not sure where they're at.
I believe Derek will be there. Caden's on the East Coast, so you never see him anymore.
You're right.
You know?
Yeah.
You don't really leave Atlanta area, East Coast, when you get back over there for school, I guess, and start wrestling. So
good. Awesome. Well, good luck this weekend, Alfonso. Have fun. We're going to be. Oh yeah, Alfonso says Derek is. Yep. So
sweet.
There you go. Cool. Well, enjoy the competition this weekend, everybody. I'll ask you one last time before we duck out of here. Wherever you're watching this at, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you're on YouTube. It's the little bell icon, and that also will let you know whenever we're about to go live. We'll do this again next Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Time. You can, of course, go back and watch the replay later. You don't have to be here live with us. But as you hit that like button or hit that subscribe button, it helps everybody that couldn't be here live tonight watch it and find it a little easier tomorrow amongst everything else going on their Facebook feed. So, okay, one last shout out here from Alfonso. SOU Raiders. That's Southern Oregon?
Yep.
Okay. I was pretty confident, but I didn't want to sound like an idiot. So, yeah, as usual, I've surrounded myself with people that are much smarter than I, so I don't sound like a big idiot. So thank you again, Al, Brian, and Jacob for joining us here. And thanks to everybody who tuned in live tonight. This has been the Idaho Matt Chat Prepcast. Enjoy the competitions, and we'll see you again next Tuesday night here on IdahoSports.com.